Okay, welcome Mrs. Thompson and the third graders of Word of Life. Brenda and I are beekeepers. We've been doing this for about 6 years. We do it in our backyard. We also have 2 teaching hives at Timothy. So if you ever would like to learn a little bit more about beekeeping, we have some suits you can put on and you can get in the hive with us. But today you're going to get to be up close and personal to these beehives with this technology that we have today. And we're going to let you go into the hives with us. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be adding to the hives today, but we'll go in and we're going to kind of do a check of the bees today. Before we get started, just to let you know what we like to do is we like to smoke them. So Brenda is going to start a fire with in our little smoker while I ask you a couple questions. And this is just to get us started to understand how this is God's creation and what God has given to us is so wonderfully made. So my first question, and I'll just give you a moment to think about it. Here in a couple weeks, we're going to have Trinity Sunday. And on Trinity Sunday, we read the account of creation from Genesis. So my question for you, on what day did God create the honeybee? So Mrs. Thompson, do you think your third graders know the answer?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Guys, do you know? You can type in the answer into chat if you think you know.
I'll give you just a second to chat in, and then I'll give you the answer. So God created the honeybees on the 5th day.
Oh, all right.
Do we have any correct answers?
Well, I did have one. Oh, I had 2 correct answers. Yes.
All right. So the 5th day, God created the honeybees. When we get done showing you honeybees, Brenda's going to show you around our yard what we have. We have all these vegetables and flowers. So my second question is, on what day did God create the flowers and all the vegetables? So I'll give you just a minute to think about that. So Mrs. Thompson, do you think they have the answer to that?
I had one student say the 3rd day.
Oh, that is exactly the right answer. Very, very good. It is something, as you will see and as we've experienced, it's just amazing what God has done in creation and how he's created the honeybees and all that they do and what they do and how they're able to be so diverse in what they do, but yet so specific in everything that they do. And you're going to get an upfront and close view of that. What we've done now is Brenda has put together some pine straw, and we smoke them now. You'll probably see some smoke. We smoke them from the front first. And what this does is they think their house is on fire, which is okay, because then they fill up with a lot of the fluid, and it slows their activity down a little bit, so it's much easier for us to go in and to take a look and see how they're doing. These 2 hives that we have a pretty good disposition, so hopefully we'll be able to show you and you'll be able to see and we'll be able to do what we want to do today and nobody will get too excited. We're glad the sun came out. They don't like it when it's cloudy and they don't like it when it's raining, but this is not too bad. We have a little bit of sunshine, so they're busy today. So what the bees do is they go out and they collect 4 things. They collect pollen, they collect nectar, they collect water, and they also connect propolis, which we're just going to call bee glue. So B-E-E, and it's G-L-O-O, glue. It's the sticky stuff. They get this resin from the trees, and that's how they stick their house together so there's no gaps, so there's no holes. So it's kind of like insulating their hive, and they use that resin, the bee glue, to do that. So Brenda has already taken care of the front. And now we're going to pop the lid, and you'll be able to see how sticky it is. I usually see I can't even get it off, so I have to take what's called a hide tool and pop the lid because they've used that glue to stick it down. So we're going to open it up, and you're going to see lots of bees. And then we have that's the top cover. And then we have this cover that goes on the bee hive. And it's stuck too, so I have to pry it open, which you'll see. Okay. See how tight they get that? So we pop that. They have that all stuck down really good. But there's a little opening here in the front, a little crack for them that they can go through and get in and get out. So we'll pop that. And then we're going to, then you're going to get a look at what they're doing in here. This is what bees are doing. They're bringing in nectar and pollen and water, and they're making honey. This is the honey that we will harvest. So I'm going to bring this up so you can see up close and personal. Laura, can you see that pretty good?
Yeah, it looks great.
You can see, Brenda can kind of point into you there how they're making the honey. And they do that on the comb. And you see the liquid, but they are showing what they're capping it. They're capping it. And they will cap that as they finish that. And then that's what we will harvest in the fall of the year. So you can see really close, the bees are busy working. They bring in the pollen, the nectar, and the water, and then they get a certain mix together, and they put it in the comb, and then that's what makes the honey. They stir it all up together, and then they actually dry it by fanning their wings. So there you get to see bees up close, and these are bees that are making honey for consumption. We'll look at one more frame, and then I'm going to pop this so you can see the brood and see, maybe we'll get to see the queen. You never know. But here you'll see, oh, this is, let's see if I can, I'll bring it this way so you can really see the honey in there. Laura, can you see the honey?
Oh, yeah, I can.
So if you can see, then all the third graders can see.
Is that that's the darker part?
They are really busy. What's that?
Is that the darker part?
Brenda, you want to point that out? Let's point out the honey there, right in the middle there, yeah. And this is over there is where they're starting to cap it. Okay? See where it's shiny in there? Can you see it? See it okay?
Yeah. Yep. So where it's shiny and darker, that's where the honey is, and the whiter part is where it's capped.
Where they're starting to cap it, yeah.
You can.
So what we're going to do is we're going to pop this top box, and it's a smaller box, and we're going to try to show you so we can show you some brood and maybe see the queen. And when this gets full, it can weigh anywhere from 60 to 80 pounds. So it gets pretty heavy. Okay. Now the bottom boxes are the boxes that the bees, that the queen lays her eggs. She'll lay somewhere around 2,000 eggs a day at this time. This hive will have somewhere between 80,000 to 90,000 bees. And the honey they make in the bottom two boxes are the boxes that they keep for the winter, that they're able to winter with. So we'll look in here, and we'll see what we see. And hopefully we'll see brood. I'll bring it up and you'll be able to see nectar. So can you see the clear liquid in there?
Yeah, I can see that. Hopefully the students can too. Guys, you see that?
That's the nectar. A lot of queen cells. I know. So this hive might have swarmed if we don't see any brood. We'll have to take a look closer here now here.
Pastor Wilson, can you explain about looking for brood and what that means?
Yeah, I will if I can find it here. If I can find what I need to find. Otherwise, we'll move to the other hive. And I know that I will. Here's some bees that have pollen. Can you see the bee there with the orange? Brenda will point him out. On his legs right here. And then the yellow.
Oh, yeah.
And the orange down there. The orange down there. That's pollen.
The guys, do you see that on the legs of the bee?
But I'm not seeing any brood. A lot of bees. So let's pop this one here and take it off and make sure on the bottom. See it down there. Okay. Let's see what we got here now. Okay. I'm going to bring this one up so you can see the pollen in there. Up there in the corner. Can you see the pollen? Where it's white.
That's in the honeycomb?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the pollen. Well, they're either making a queen, hopefully. There's no brood, is there? But since there's a queen, maybe there's a queen in here somewhere. We just get started. Okay, we're going to put this one back together, and then we're going to put another super on the top, and then we're going to look at the other one.
One of the students said they thought they saw 2 queen bees. Is that possible?
No, there's only one queen, and they wouldn't have seen a queen. Okay, I'm going to put a super on this one. So you won't see me for a minute here. little while, you'll see me. And we're going to put this on so they got room to put more honey. Do you want to put it all back together then?
So do you start with just one box and then you add boxes as the season goes?
Keep adding the boxes as they keep bringing in nectar and pollen and water so that they're good to go. What? You didn't? Now let's do that. We can put the top on there. So Brenda's going to show you here what we have. We have a beetle catcher. We put a little olive oil in this, or any kind of vegetable oil, and it goes in to catch any hive beetle.
Pastor Wilson, can you repeat that? What does that go in to catch?
Goes in to catch any hive beetle.
So those would be invaders that could hurt the bees?
Yeah, they rob the honey and they weaken the bees. And now we put in, I'll show you, this is the frame that it starts with nothing on it. And the bees make everything that you saw. And then we put it in here at a kind of a separation so that they have room in between to make and to have room to put the comb and also put the honey. So, put the other. So we're going to get into the other one. Hopefully we'll be able to see a queen and some brood. And then we'll tell you what that is. So Brenda's going to smoke these guys so we can get in there and take a look at them. I have this brush. This is what we use to brush the bees. When there's too many of them, we just brush them so that we don't hurt them. But that way we can have access to a frame or what we're looking at. We got ants in this one, which is not good.
That happen pretty regularly?
Well, not always, but there must be something here that attracted them. Kind of clean that up. I do have some cinnamon that I'm going to put on top of here. And cinnamon will, lots of times, then get rid of your... Okay. So these guys now are... This is a new hive that we got this year. And this would be the same you saw before. I'll just bring that up to you there. And you can see how they are making, you can see all the liquid in there. They're making the honey. Can you see the golden color?
I can, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes me
all
hungry.
Pure, brand new honey that they've made. But we're going to pop this box then off, and then we get you down to the bottom, and hopefully we'll be able to see some activity here by the queen. And we'll get to see some larvae and some new baby bees. Okay. So what we have here on the top, this is, I'll just bring this up to you, this is some of the comb. Can you see that? That's the comb that they build and they put together. They make that all themselves.
Wow.
You can see that okay? And we'll see what we have here now. Okay. This one we got comb, and we have, okay. Can you see the little brown comb there? That's where the queen has laid the egg, and then there's a larvae in there, and then they come out. Brenda, do you want to point out that white in there? That's yellow. Oh, there. I don't see any white. I don't see any larvae on this one. They're not capped. Well, these are. Yeah, that's just pollen. I don't see any. So you see all the caps?
Yes.
Those are baby bees underneath their larvae. The queen laid an egg in there, and then they will hatch from there. That's how the bees hatch. This is, yeah. Are they coming out? There you can see some babies being born. You see them coming out right here?
Oh my goodness.
And I see over here, and we won't have to take out any more, but right over, see the larvae? Point that. Can you see the right white? Here? That's a larvae. Just a baby that's just beginning. She'll have to cap that yet. She might be on here. Pretty fresh. Yeah, but you can see can you see the babies being born? Baby bees. Look at, they're coming out. Coming out.
Oh my goodness. Yep. It's the little tiny white things.
No, actually the bees coming out.
Oh, okay, so they're coming out of the holes right now.
Yep.
Yep. Oh my goodness.
They've developed and they push their way out, and they're going to be being born. And let me see if I see her.
Happy Hatch Day, little bees.
Yeah, happy Hatch Day. Thank you. Kind of blow on them, you can get them to move a little bit to see where she might be. Oh, big one. Well, I don't see her on here. We'll look at one more frame. And then we're going to put another box on this one. I want to smoke them a little bit. Get a little fancy here.
Is the queen larger than the other bees?
She's a lot larger, but she's longer. Thin and long.
Does she have a blue dot on her back?
Well, you see one with a blue dot? Sometimes they are marked. Sometimes people will mark them. But they're just getting kind of started on this one. They got a lot of work to do to get it all ready to go, so it'll be a good home for new bees and for her to lay eggs. She's laying some. You'll see right over here, it would be on my right, be on your left, down there, that brown area.
Yes.
Where she's just starting to lay, and then they cover them up until then they come out until when they're born, or when they hatch, I guess.
Some of the students are very punny. They said, I've never seen one being born.
Yeah. Now there you see a pretty good pattern where what you see inside there is what the bees put in to feed the bees inside that liquid in there, the nectar. They feeds the new bees until they're born, these larvae. Can you hear me, Laura? Laura?
Yes, I can.
I thought we popped off. So you can see the cap. That's a good pattern, a good way in which she's laid her eggs. And then they've capped them, and then these will all hatch and come out. Same way on that side. And up on the corner, you see some with pollen. See the one walking there with pollen on his leg?
Yes.
So, no sighting of the queen. So we're going to put this one back together again and put a top on them. And then we can give you a little tour. Another box up here. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put the last one on here. Okay. I'm going to make sure you have the right. Okay. I'll let Brenda put this back together. I'm going to go get, I think I have some cinnamon up here that I'm going to put on that top to get rid of those ants.
Brenda, will the ants actually get down into the hive and cause problems?
Yeah, they can. Huh, I don't see my cinnamon. There we go. So I put a little ground cinnamon on the top, and that will usually get rid of the ants. Uh-oh. Laura?
Yes.
Okay. So Brenda's putting that catcher for hive beetles, and I have the cinnamon here that I just sprinkle on the top, and that will get rid of hopefully those ants. Okay. I'll put this back together again. You want to put that brick back on there then. And then what we'll do is have Brenda give you a little tour of the yard, and then we'll answer questions. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just gonna move the camera around so I don't make you too dizzy, okay?
Can you hear Brenda okay?
Oh, yeah, it's a little bit low, but
Okay, just a minute here.
Okay, I'm gonna turn the camera around rather than make you dizzy and carry the camera around, okay?
sounds good.
Okay, so we love to have our yard full of things that pollinators like, and so our yard is full of all kinds of things that all types of pollinators like, not just honeybees, but all types. So in the back part here is our garden, and in the garden we have lettuce and beets and kale and spinach and Swiss chard and beets and tomatoes and cucumbers and zucchini and summer squash and peppers and eggplant. And I have some edible flowers back there also. And kind of interesting, there is one type of bee that only pollinates cucumbers. So it's important that we have cucumbers in our garden too. And then across from the beehives is it's all flowers, and most of it is native. Our honeybees seem to know what a native flower is, and those are the flowers that they pollinate. So it's important for us to have our native flowers in our garden so that they can pollinate them and take the pollen back to the hive. And then over just past the bird bath, we also have a fountain for the bees. They drink about 3 gallons of water per hive per day. I think that's kind of amazing. They take in, I think, their body weight of water every day. So when you figure, 80,000 bees, that's a lot of water. And then over here, I think you can see past the wind chime, we have blackberries, and it was full of blossoms, and the bees loved it, and we are going to have a lot of blackberries this year. So that is our yard.
So the plants that you plant are helpful for the bees, but then the bees also help you guys with what you get, right? With the fruits and vegetables.
Yes. And a bee will travel 2 to 3 miles to get pollen also, which I think is incredible. And St. Louis has a lot of green space, which is great. And we have the botanical garden, so they are well pollinated.
Okay, we're going to bring you up now to the house and sit by our deck so that we can answer questions that you might have for us today, okay?
Making them dizzy now.
Sounds good. Third graders, if you have not asked a question yet and this has made you think of one, feel free to type it into the chat.
Okay. Can you hear us okay?
I can, yes.
Okay. Can you see us okay?
Yep.
Okay. So what questions, Mrs. Thompson, have been asked?
So one student asked, how long do bees live?
That's a good question. This time of year, they live about 21 days, 21 to 28 days. They actually work so hard, they work themselves to death. In the winter time, a hive will go down to from 80,000 to 100,000 bees down to about 10 to 20,000 bees, and then they live a little bit longer. They will live sometimes about 3 months. That gets them through the winter, and so that's about the lifespan. I told the 5th graders I did this with a while ago, if you have a chance to watch the Bee Movie, where Jerry Seinfeld is the head bee, I think, or one of the worker bees. It's really a great movie that really gives you the life of the bee. So maybe everybody wants to watch the Bee Movie this weekend.
Another student asked how, so the beehive that you guys have in the back, what is that made out of, the human part, the human built part?
That's made out of wood, usually pine wood. And some of them are made down in DeSoto. We have a bee group at Timothy. It's called Timothy Urban Beekeepers. You can check us out on Facebook. We have a guy in DeSoto who builds the white hives, the white ones that you see, the white boxes. The red box is one that we first started with, and we bought that as a kit and then put it together. And so that's kind of the difference. But they're all made out of wood. However, we have some friends down in the Tower Grove area, and they actually have like an insulated, made kind of out of insulation, insulated hive, like a thermal, yeah,
Cooler.
And I did see one that someone sent me today that someone made out of Legos.
Wow. Can you go in a little? Can you talk a little bit about how the honey actually gets made?
Yeah, they bring in the nectar, the water, and the pollen, and they have some sort of a mix, plus some juices that they're able to, that God has given them to be able to sort of rejuvenate, or they mix it together with what they have, like saliva, and then that together makes the honey. And then they fan it to get it down to a certain humidity, so it's harvestable, so it's something that they can keep, because honey will keep forever. They have gone back and looked and found some old caves back over in India and other Africa and places like that, where honey's been there forever, and it's still as good.
Wow. What is the size of a queen bee?
She's just a little bit bigger than some of the bees that you saw, some of the real little, kind of the little worker bees. She's just really long, and she has kind of a queen appearance about her. She's sort of elegant, you might say. She can have a different color to her sometimes, maybe a little red or a little darker brown, and she moves quite quickly, but they protect her. That's why we don't always see her. But she's very noticeable if you see her. I mean, she's much different than the rest of the bees.
Awesome. So some of the kids are wondering, how much honey are you able to get out of the hive, and what do you do with it?
Well, our hives that we have here at home, we got last year, we got about 120 pounds of honey from 2 hives, which is really quite a little bit, anywhere from 60 sometimes to 80 pounds, but normally you usually will get 30 to 40 pounds per hive that you harvest. There's usually honey down in the bottom, and the honey down in the bottom is what they, like I mentioned, that's what they use to winter, so they can winter and have food for the winter, and then we take the rest. What we do with our honey is we usually give it to family and to friends. We give it to our neighbors. We sell a little bit, and then the church honey that we harvest, we sell that at the Christmas market, and then that money is used to help fund people that if they'd like to get started. So anyone who wants to get started in beekeeping, we give them a $150 grant, and that kind of helps them get started in the bee business.
One of the students asked, if the queen bee dies, do all the other bees die in her hive?
No, what they do is if the queen dies or the queen leaves, which she sometimes will, then they will actually make another queen. So you might have heard Brenda and I mention that there was queen cells. So down on the bottom of a frame that we were looking at, there'll be a little cluster, kind of like a snow, not a cone, cone, like a cone, but what's that? Waffle cone, or one of those cones with the pointed end. Drumstick. It kind of looks like that, and they will make a new queen. And so when they do that, sometimes then there's some fighting that goes on, because there's only one queen per hive, only one queen. And as we've kind of wanted, you want the queen to be happy, because the queen kind of gives the whole disposition, however the hive is acting. If they're angry, if they're happy, sort of goes on how the queen is, her disposition. If she's happy, if she's unhappy, then everybody's unhappy. Kind of how it works.
Have you ever had an angry hive?
We have had a couple times, and sometimes you have to get rid of the queen. But what we had found is that we had them in the shade, and they don't like to be in the shade. They like to have full sun, because when they come out in the morning, that's how they get their direction of where to go. They look at the sun, and then they come back and they do a little dance, a little performance in front, and then everybody in the hive knows where they're going to go and harvest pollen and nectar that day, or where they're going to go and get the resin to the bee glue to tighten up the frame. And they all have their work to do. When you have a rainy spell like we had a little bit ago here, then everybody has to be busy. All the bees then sort of forego what they were supposed to be doing, and they all go out and they forage. They get pollen and nectar because they're behind and they want to get caught up. So you kind of have to stay with them and what they're doing and watch what they're doing. Other than that, they don't take a lot of looking after. They kind of know what they're doing.
And there are a lot of different jobs too.
A lot of different jobs, as Brenda mentioned. Bees.
There are worker bees, there are nurse bees, there's bees that go out and scout, there's guard bees, there's, what else?
Well, there's even like undertaker.
Pastor Wilson, the sound just cut out.
I can't hear you.
The sound has just cut out. Can you hear me?
There we go.
Okay, now I can, sorry, the sound cut out, but I can hear you again.
Yeah, I had a phone call come in.
Oh, got it.
Came in on the Bluetooth.
So speaking of undertaker bees, what happens when the bees die? What do the bees do with them?
They clean them up. They push them out of the hive, and then they just sort of go back to the earth. But they do clean them up. But they keep, if you were to be inside that hive, you wouldn't believe how clean it is. I mean, everything's immaculate. They clean it up and they keep it very, very clean. Any debris, anything that comes in that doesn't belong, away it goes.
You probably get this question a lot, but do you guys get stung a lot when you're working with the bees?
Well, we have in the past when we haven't paid attention or when we didn't put on our suits. That's why we put on our suits and have our gloves on and keep our legs covered. When each of us have thought we could do something with the bees and could just kind of sneak in and sneak out. Yeah, Brenda can tell you her story, how she got stung one day.
Well, when we first got them, I was just so amazed at and watching them all the time. They were so interesting. And so I'm standing in front of the hive, watching them go in and out and bringing in the pollen. And one just came out and he stung me right on the end of my nose. And I'm like, ah, and so you're not supposed to pinch a bee because then it'll squeeze the venom into your skin and make it worse. You're supposed to scrape it off. So I'm trying to scrape off the bee off my nose. But what I found out, it was my fault. I was in their flight path. They don't know I'm just looking. So you should never stand right in front of a hive, just stand there because they don't know. So I learned my lesson about that.
Yeah. And what we do when we're out working is they will usually bump us if they don't want us in their space. And when you get one bump or two bumps, you better move or you're going to probably get stuck.
Yep, they do. They bump you first.
When a bee stings you, does it die?
It does.
Yes, it does. It does.
How can you tell how old a bee is?
You can tell the young ones just because when they're first born, they look very fresh and new, but they don't live that long. So it's a little difficult to know, if they're on day 1 or day 2 or day 21 and getting close to the end. So I don't know the answer to that question.
Do bees make hives underground?
Some bees do,
Not honey.
but not honeybees.
What would happen to the world if there were no more bees all of a sudden?
Well, the bees supply about 2/3 of our food supply because it needs to be pollinated. So your food table in the grocery store would look a whole lot different if we didn't have honeybees. A lot of the things that need to be pollinated would not be pollinated, and so a lot of your vegetables, a lot of your fruits, apples, strawberries, blackberries, all those sorts of things you would not have because they would not get pollinated and they would not produce.
What do the bees use the honey for themselves?
Honey is used for their energy, for their food source. That's what they use, and they store up. They eat the honey for themselves to have energy, but also then to store up and have enough for the winter to be able to feed the hive so it survives in the time of the season when there is no nectar and there is no pollen and no water.
We leave the bottom 2 boxes on for the winter.
Yeah, so the bottom 2 boxes are left on for the winter. And we usually harvest the honey in August. So that gives them time, September, end of August and September and October to build up anything that we've taken away so that they have enough to get through the winter.
How high do the bees fly up in the air?
Quite a ways. They'll leave about 2 miles, but I don't think their flight pattern is too high because they're pretty efficient and they want to get to where they're going to get the pollen or get the nectar or get the bee glue or get water, whatever, and then get back to the hive. So the more you can keep, in your own space where they can go to, probably the better it is for the bees because they don't have to travel so far to get what they need and then to get back.
What are threats right now to the honeybee population?
One is the hive beetle that we mentioned. Now, we didn't see any beetles in there today, so that's good. Also, it's one called a varroa mite. So varroa mites are something that will attach themselves to the little larvae, the white babies, and then they get in there and they get into the lungs of the bees, and then they weaken the bees, and so then the bees will die. And so we try to treat. There's a product that we can use in the fall to treat the hive so that you get rid of the varroa mites. But the best thing is to keep the hive healthy and to keep the hive strong with lots of bees, and that usually will take care of it.
What happens if you took all the honey from the hive?
Well, then they wouldn't have anything to eat for the winter, and then they would starve and die.
Okay, I think I have gotten all the questions that the students have entered.
Those are some really good questions. Very, very good questions.
We did get one more. What about the murder hornet?
Oh, yeah. In fact, someone today that lives out in Warrington sent me a picture that they thought might have been one of those hornets. But I don't know if they're around. I know some states are already enacting some provisions to get rid of these hornets so that they don't, to protect the honeybees. So always a concern, but I haven't seen any myself.
Do bees have tongues, like a proboscis, like a butterfly does?
Yeah, they do. Like I mentioned, if you watch the bee movie, you can see they do have all those parts, and you get to see all of those in the bee movie. But they do have, because that's how they lots of times will gather, or they go around when they do pollinating, or when they bring in the nectar and things like that. They do have that, some sort of not a tongue like we have exactly, but there is something that they call their tongue. Yes.
Are there bees in every state?
As far as I know, I think so. Even in the northern states and everywhere we go, there's beekeepers. There's beekeepers in every state. Lots of times, some of the states are professional beekeepers. They will, or that's their business. They actually move their bees to where people will hire them to come to pollinate, like wineries, grapes, blueberries. They'll pollinate, pistachios, oranges they don't. They'll blackberries, so anybody who's in the business will sometimes have to take they'll charge a cost to transport their bees. So every now and then you'll hear about a semi tipping over all full of bees, that's what's happening. The bees were headed somewhere to do pollinating. So they're in every state as far as I know.
What would happen if, for example, a tractor full of bees tipped over? What would the bees do?
Well, they would fly away. They would find themselves, a tree or something, and some place they would go. So they're able to be out. They don't have to be in boxes like this. They're able to be in trees. Sometimes people will get them even in their houses. They get up in the attics or something, or they'll pull apart. Here a few years ago, Ascension, where you go into the office, they had them up somewhere in the church office up high, and they see the bees going in and out. When they opened that up, it was all full of honey.
So what is it when a hive swarms? What is it doing?
Well, what happens is if they get so full that they have no more room to build honey or to make honey, they will swarm just to get out of there to find another place. That's one reason. Another reason is if they make a new queen, the old queen will leave with some of her bees, and then they leave. And sometimes they're just not happy where they're at, and they decide they're going to leave. And so this time of year is a big time for swarms. People will see swarms all over. We had a swarm in our back tree this year. You see every now and then you see swarms of bees, or you'll hear about them. They'll be on sometimes fences. They'll be on trees, and these bees have left. They've left a hive, or maybe they even have left a tree that they were in, and they're going to find a new place.
In the bee's body, how many sections are in its body?
Well, I don't know that answer. Yeah, I think it's, yeah. Again, I would direct them to the bee movie.
Do bees sleep at night?
They go in, but I think they work all the time. Busy as a bee, you've heard that phrase. That's what is truly. They actually work themselves to death. They work so hard.
One interesting thing that they do too, I think, is they keep the same temperature in the hive all the time. So they can regulate the temperature with their wings. And sometimes when it's really hot outside, the bees will cover the outside of the box to keep it cooler inside, just to keep it the same temperature, even in the winter.
In the wintertime, they'll cluster together tight. But everything is to protect the queen, to keep her comfortable and to keep her happy and to keep her producing.
How many sections are there in the beehive? Are there certain places that are used for different things?
No, pretty much it's just we put in the frames, and then foundation, which is the part where the bees then build the honeycomb, and then it's pretty much all comb, and then also then in the comb where they put the nectar and the pollen. So they have the different places where they do that, or where they put the food for the new bees. So it's pretty much all looks the same.
Do bees like the cold weather?
I know. They much rather have it hot and sunny.
Okay, how are queens born?
Well, that's an interesting, how a queen is, there's only one queen, and so there will be they call them drones, which is the male bee, and the male bees all go out and they do a flight, and one of them gets picked and chosen to to be able to be with the queen, and then the queen comes from that. It's kind of complicated, and probably a little more of a biology question or a genetics question that probably I don't have time to answer or really know how to explain it the best.
All right, I do. Okay, I think at this point I've gotten them all the questions.
That's good, Laura. Okay, thank you guys for taking time to be with us today. I hope you enjoyed it.